Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. So welcome back to Paris History Avec Hemingway. Today we are talking about Marie Benoist. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but Claudine is going to tell us all the fun facts about this woman.
Yeah, she is actually really interesting. And I didn't know much about her, but I had seen a painting she has done in the Louvre, which I will get to. And I love this painting. And so then I was curious to find out who painted it and then discovered all these fantastic things about her that we're going to share with you.
I love when things like that happen.
That's why I just love to wander around the Louvre for hundreds and hundreds of hours like I do.
That is your second home.
So Marie Guillemine de la Vie Leroux Benoist is her name. She was born December 18th, 1768 in Paris. She was born to a political family. Her father, René Leroux de la Ville, served in multiple different roles in the government and was even in the cabinet of Louis XVI.
Ooh, so she was connected to the kingdom.
Yeah, she was definitely connected. So she showed at a very early age that she was a very talented artist. And at just 13 years old in 1781, she began to train with a gal we've talked about before, Elisabeth Vigée-Lebrun, who, if you remember, was the artist that painted Marie Antoinette.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, she was amazing. She was the one that also painted another painting you can find in the Louvre. That is of what they call the first smile in Western art, because it was, God forbid, a painting of her showing her mouth open a little bit and you could see her teeth.
Oh, wow. So scandalous.
It was very scandalous at the time. So she ended up, Vigée-Lebrun was huge in the realm of a female artist at the time. And her father, because he did have these political ties and he was in the court, in the government of Louis XVI, she was able to get into the atelier of Vigée-Lebrun and start to hone her skills as a painter.
Love that. See women working their way into the arts.
She did it. So in 1784, she did her first painting that was presented at the Salon, and it was a painting of her father, a portrait. And so she was, at that time, she wasn't even 20 years old.
Oh my gosh, she was a baby. That's
when her
crazy.
First painting was exhibited at the Salon. And then after, so Vigée-Lebrun was redoing her atelier and was moving it. And so she ended up going into the workshop of another, even more famous painter, Jacques-Louis David. And Jacques-Louis David, we've talked about before as well. He is the one that, among many other things that we've talked specifically about, is the painting of the Sacré de Napoléon, which is the painting of the coronation of Napoleon, even though technically he's coronating Josephine. But it's an amazing, amazing painting. It is the neoclassical style. So she started working in his studio with him, and he at the time really had there's different accounts I've come across. He was really supportive of women artists, or he either just relegated them to painting pictures of flowers. So with this story, he definitely was supportive of her. There was a mandate that was put down by Louis XVI that declared that that female artists could no longer train in the Louvre. And at the time, Jacques-Louis David actually lived in the Louvre and had his studio there, and it was in the very back corner on the east side of it, and on the southeast side of it, the corner. That is where he had his atelier. And so she was in the Louvre, in his atelier, learning how to paint.
Wait, that guy was living in the
Yeah, there was
Louvre?
quite a long period of time where artists actually lived in the Louvre. When after Louis XIV abandoned it and moved out to Versailles and hadn't even finished it, that portion of it was given to artists, and so quite a few different artists lived and painted in the Louvre.
Can you imagine living in the
Yeah,
Louvre?
well, and it's, it didn't look like it does now at that time because Louis did leave it unfinished, and so the top floor of it didn't even have a roof on it. And so people were setting up, and they were setting up little, fireplaces, and it was there. It got to a point where Napoleon actually kicked everybody out because it was also quite the fire hazard.
Yeah, exactly. Like, get out! All these artists lighting
Yeah, just
candles
lighting
and
candles. But
chemicals from paint.
yeah, but she was just 18 years old when she started there with David, and her sister as well, Marie Elizabeth, actually wanted to be a painter as well. She didn't really go on to do much after this, but she was actually in his atelier at the time. And it's thought that David actually might have done it just to retaliate against Louis XVI, because he did say, women artists aren't allowed to be in the Louvre. And so he kind of was like, F you, buddy, I'm bringing some of them in here. So it was his kind of way of getting back, because David, of course, was known as being, the painter to the Bonaparte later. So he definitely aligned himself with some anti-royalty type of things. So I don't think he was very happy with Louis XVI. So he definitely wanted to bring her in, and her sister, and he really encouraged her to, at the time, to actually paint historical themes, which was something women didn't get to do. They were relegated to paint pretty things like flowers and landscapes, and domestic themes of young children, and women in the kitchen. So
Of course, where we
yeah,
belong.
so she wasn't, historical paintings at the time, which is what he went through a big period of being, and that's what he's probably most known for now, is definitely was not something that, women should know anything about.
Of
Yeah, of
course.
course. So he was, David, of course, was very neoclassical. He was huge into these very classic themes, like the very classic compositions. But in 1795, she began to move away from his influence a little bit more, and actually bring some of her early teachings with Vigée Lebrun back into her pieces that she was creating. And at the time, she created a lot of stuff in pastels. Very sadly, very little of that is even remains to this day, which is very sad that we can't see any of it. But she also loved to take on classic mythological themes, and which was another big thing in art at the time. Which, when we've talked before about the ladies of Manet, and Olympia shocking everybody with her nakedness. You know, at the time, the only thing that was, okay to paint, if you were going to paint women completely naked, was if it's allegorical, mythological, or religious. And so
Oh,
if you are
boring.
depicting a woman naked, and she is, Olympia, as in, being a prostitute or something like that, it was shocking. But I don't really know the difference of a naked woman in art, depending. It's like all of a sudden it's okay if she's supposed to be, Venus, but she's not okay if she's, Susie that lives down the street.
Exactly. Not the
No,
same.
not really the same, but it was a big deal back then. But in 1791, she had also painted a very famous theme that is used a lot of times in neoclassical paintings, a story of innocence between virtue and vice. Normally vice is a woman, and I will put I'll put some other examples of other painters that had painted that same theme, but usually vice is depicted as a woman, but she changed it into a man.
Ooh,
Yeah, so she
scandalous.
flipped everything around. She, in the same year, also painted a painting of Psyche saying goodbye to her family. These early paintings, of course, a lot of them, some of them are in a private collection. Most of them, sadly, we can't get to see now. But she became
Yeah.
very well known at the time as a woman, as a female artist, and with behind Vigée Lebrun. I mean, Vigée, of course, was like the one that everybody knew of, but she kind of was part of a little gang of ladies that were artists, and they were starting to pick up some momentum and some steam and getting accepted, and people coming after them and wanting them, commissioning them to do portraits. That was a big thing. Most of these women we talk about from this period of time, most of them were portrait painters because that was, they'd paint it for somebody and then somebody else would see it and they'd want to have it done for them. So it definitely, that was kind of most of what you see from the women of the 18th century that were artists are portraits.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So, Vigée Lebrun, of course, she almost exclusively did portraits. She has so many of them. And so, but she did, Marie had, a few of the other ones with Psyche and Vice but she ended up doing mostly portraits. The only thing that remains really now are a few of her portraits.
Well, I'm sad that we lost so many of
I
them.
know.
I want to
It's
see
like we
more.
didn't even know.
Yeah. We didn't know what we were
We
missing.
didn't even know what we were missing. But then when you start looking into it, you're like, oh, where is that? And you're like, oh, it's just a picture of it online and it's either private collection or just disappeared.
Well, now we
Now we
know.
know. But on March 12th, 1792, she ended up getting married to Pierre Vincent Benoist. He was an Englishman. Oh, the scandal. And he was also a politician, just like her father, and he was a very loyal royalist. At the time, it wasn't really a great idea. In 1789, of course, is when Marie Antoinette and Louis left Versailles. And 1792 was basically the flight, the main part of the terror. So at that time, they ended up actually leaving and having to actually flee France for a year, just because the terror was a period of time where anybody associated with royalty, even if you were the ones who washed their socks, you would be on the chopping block.
What? Even the
Yeah,
sock
anybody
washer?
that was basically, if they could figure out a way that you were tied to Louis the 16th or Marie Antoinette, you would basically be killed. And we've talked about many of those people, mostly the women, but they definitely over time, that's why so many of them like escaped and fled France. And then what that time they were, if you left, then basically you were saying, I'm completely renouncing everything I have that's here in France. And so people could just go in there and take your stuff. And that's why there's art in the museums that will actually say seized during the revolution. There's little things on the plaque because they were taken, because some of these people left and flee, and they ended up going in and being able to take everything that they had.
Oh man, that's so
Yeah,
crap.
it's really bad. Some of them ended up being able to come back, like Vigée Lebrun. She actually ended up being able to come back later on down the road. But Marie, actually, they only had to leave for a year. And then they came back. She was actually very smart. And even with her husband being a royalist, she was able to kind of keep mixing in, going from, Louis the 16th to Napoleon. And then again later with Louis the 18th. So very few people were able to do that because, the Bonapartists didn't look kindly on those that followed, the royalists and vice versa. So she was actually because of her art, able to kind of mix and mingle in the middle of it.
I mean, I like to be the middleman. She can hang out with everybody.
Yeah. But at the same time, it was like they were like, what do you actually stand for? But she was at that same time, she was then commissioned because Napoleon saw some of her stuff that she did and he liked it. So he actually commissioned her to paint him a full-size painting of him that was given to Ghent.
Oh wait, why?
What?
Like, why did they?
Well, it was at that time, France had taken over Ghent, and so it was
Hmm,
under the crown of France at the time. And so, of course, as a lovely gift, here is a giant painting of your emperor.
how
How
lovely.
lovely, yeah. But she and her husband ended up actually having 3 kids. Her son Denis went on to keep going into the family business of political life. But and then afterwards he ended up getting married. He had a daughter who ended up marrying the Daru, who was his Daru Napoleon Daru, his godparents were Josephine and Napoleon, and he is what part of the Louvre is named after.
No
Which, of course,
way.
I just love any little story that all ties back to the Louvre.
I mean, it is your second
It
home.
is my second home. It would be if I could live in there like Jacques Louis David, and I could live in like the apartments of Napoleon III. I think that'd be fantastic.
I mean, I think you should try. You should look
I
into
always
it.
have thought that I could crawl into the middle of that round sofa that has big, huge palm plants coming out of it, that maybe if I went in there, they wouldn't notice.
That's a great idea. I think you should be squatting in
Yeah,
the
I
Louvre.
think so. Hopefully, they're not listening to this. Yeah. So she, luckily at that time, she had these 3 children. She was kind of at the height of her career at the same time as this. She had also moved into the Louvre and set up her own atelier there and studio. And so it's where she painted some of her most famous pieces. And there's one piece in particular that is very famous, and it's very gorgeous, and it has an amazing story to it. But like I said, I didn't even know who she was until I started looking into this painting some more, and then noticed it was a female artist, and that's how we got to where we are today.
And now we know all
Now
about
we know
her.
all about her. So this painting, it was painted in 1800. She had visited her brother-in-law's family. They were living just outside of Paris, and they had a servant there that they had brought with them from Guadeloupe, and her name was Madeline. And she was living there when, at the time, in 1794, they had abolished slavery. And so, if they brought, anybody with them to France, they had to basically be freed, and they could stay, but they were hired as a servant, and so they were given more rights, and now they had a job that they got paid for. And so this beautiful woman was working for her brother-in-law, and she ended up spending time there, and saw her, and decided she was going to paint a painting, and using Madeline as the subject. So, with her influence of Jacques Louis David, she had her post for her briefly, sitting on a winged chair, and basically she was sitting there in the very classical style of like Madame Recamier and a bunch of other paintings that Devi did in the past. And here she is, this beautiful Black woman, and she was wrapped in a white cloth that was kind of tied almost, like just a very empire style at the time way. She has a white fabric tied around her head, and she's looking straight at you. Her right breast is revealed, and that is one of those things where it's kind of you see that in art a lot, and it symbolizes different things. It symbolizes motherhood or womanhood, but it's also a symbol of charity, and then also, but it's also kind of a political symbol of power.
Why
Well,
power?
just because it basically shows, and that's what, like Liberty Leading the People by Delacroix, she's revealing her right breast, because it's this power of how basically from a woman is, it's the origin of the world, basically.
That makes
Does that
sense.
make sense? So next time we do a photo shoot, we'll have to remember this.
I like that. Let's recreate.
Yeah, we'll recreate Liberty Leading the People. Yeah, I think that is when the Louvre would be like, you need to go. But she was sitting there in this chair, and she, at the time, black skin was not something that people painted. It was, if there were black subjects in paintings, it was always as a servant. They were always kind of in the background, with, the white woman or man, as the focal point of the painting. And, just like Olympia with Lore in the background, she, and at the time it was just called with a black servant. And so this was one of the very first times that a black figure was depicted in a painting, and she was the only thing in the painting.
Whoa, scandalous.
Yeah, so, and it's a beautiful, beautiful painting, and it's sadly it's in the Sully wing, and it's up on the second floor, and it's kind of, which is one of my favorite areas, but it's kind of hidden away. Most people aren't going to go there to that part of the Louvre unless they're traveling from one place to the other, or they're lost.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I really wish that they would move it into the Salle des Roues, which is where a lot of the David paintings are, like Sacre de Napoleon and then Madame Racamier. I really wish that they would move it down there so more people could actually see it. But at the time, this is a painting that actually got the attention of Napoleon, and why Napoleon then wanted her to paint him and multiple members of his family. So it wasn't even that shocking to people when they saw this painting, because it was so well done and so beautiful that people weren't actually even shocked. At the time, of course, it was, slavery was abolished, but then it was brought back. Napoleon actually put it back in place later on, which kind of
thanks, Napoleon.
So, and that's a big mark against Napoleon that a lot of people brought up this year when it was the 200th anniversary of his death. So it was, the painting was purchased on June 27th, 1818. It was purchased by the director of the Maison de Roi, the Museum of the King, along with 3 of her other paintings. So all 4 paintings were purchased for 11,000 francs, which was not very much money at the time. It was put on display at the Musée de Luxembourg, and then it eventually moved into the Louvre under Louis XVIII.
What a steal.
So it was, it's then the other 3 paintings they purchased at the same time, I cannot find anything about it. So I don't know if they were destroyed or they disappeared. But the painting is pretty amazing. It was always been known as the Portrait of a Negress. And it was changed, though, in 2017. They did a bunch of research on a bunch of different paintings for an exhibit that was going to be at the Musée d'Orsay. And it was basically the black model from Jericho to, I think it was Matisse was the name of the exhibit. And it was fantastic. They took all of these amazing paintings of these different black models, and they did all of this research to find out who they were, and they gave them all names. So now it's called the Portrait of Madeleine.
Oh, so they changed it to Madeleine once they renamed it.
But sadly, the plaque in the Louvre still does not say that. So
I need to update
hopefully they change that, and they change it to what it should be now. But the exhibit at the Orsay was amazing. I have something, I wrote something about it on my website, ClaudineHemingway.com, a couple years ago after I saw it. It was really, really well done. It was really interesting. And they, using a lot of, like with the Manet Olympia, they would use some of Manet's journals to find out what her name was. They found her address and her first name, but we still don't know her last name. Jericho used this one model many times, including for the Raft of the Medusa, that some of these models, they were just absolutely stunning. And a lot of these artists absolutely loved using them. And now we actually end up being able to give them a name and kind of know their story a little more.
I love that you're helping us discover them.
I love them. So, but then later on, because her husband was involved with, politics, and she was becoming quite well known for what she was doing. She was asked basically to stop painting and said, you really shouldn't be doing this because you have too much attention on you and too many people know you. So you need to step back. So she actually ended up in 1814, she stopped painting altogether. And she actually ended up selling off a lot of her paintings, which is why sadly, we don't see a lot of these, and the only ones that we really do have are because she was commissioned for them, and they were placed someplace else. She also did 2 paintings of Napoleon's sisters, and it's a painting of a marshal. So there's only a handful, and some of them are at Versailles. There's one at Fontainebleau. And then, of course, the Napoleon is still up in Ghent. But sadly, we don't get to see a whole lot of the other ones.
Well, we want more. Where are they?
We want more. And I tried looking. One of them, I found the Psyche one was sold and for like 229,000 euros about 4 years ago. And it's just in a private collection. Sometimes things from private collections end up getting loaned out, and you'll find them in exhibits. So, hopefully that happens. It's wonderful that people can afford and purchase these paintings, but sometimes it's just sad because then none of us ever get to see them.
Yeah, share the wealth, guys.
Yeah. So she ended up, she kind of hung up her paintbrushes in 1814, and then she ended up living until she was 57 years old. She died on October 8th, 1826.
She was an old hag for that time.
Yeah. But she the painting of Madeleine is in the Louvre, and you can see it. It's in on the second floor of the Sully wing, which is the back side of the Louvre. And it's the entire second floor that overlooks the Cour Carrée is all French paintings. And I think I probably spent 2.5 full days over 2 weeks going through every single room. Mind you, I've done this before, but I did it again. And I go through and take 1,000 photos and make 1,000,000 notes. And I have a video that I made in the room where she is. So I will put that on my website too, so you could see it. But it's in rooms 935 if you end up going there. And if you are going and you need any help, of course, if I'm there, I'll give you a tour of the Louvre. But if I'm not there and you want to go, let me know, and I could help tell you how to get there, because it is the Louvre can be very, very overwhelming to try to maneuver.
It's huge.
It's 15 kilometers. If you laid it out end to end, it's 15 kilometers.
We should start like a gym in there. We could work out, do some power walking.
Well, one time I was in there and I looked on later and I had walked 6 miles. And I was like, I only went to the Louvre today and I did 6 miles in there. But recently, actually, when I was on the second floor of the Sully wing, there were people doing yoga. They had there was a woman instructing them, and they had yoga mats down, and I was getting very annoyed.
I guess they do let you work out in there.
Yeah. So I was like, what is going on? And of course, like I said, the Sully wing on the second floor, very few people venture over to there. And literally when I see people walking through, they're just trying to get someplace or they're lost. So very few people go there specifically. And so it's quieter part. So I'm sure that's why they allow it. And then, but these people, and they were just doing these weird breathing techniques. And I was just trying to enjoy and love the art I was seeing. And I hear this, and I was like, what is happening?
Stop breathing.
And then they would get up and go to a different room. And it was like they were following me. Finally, I was like, I give up. I'll come back tomorrow.
Oh my God, I love it. You should just join them. Doing yoga in the Louvre sounds cool. Super hipster.
I know, but I was just like, can we not do this right here? But they're trying to expand their audience and hip it up, I guess. So doing yoga I would love to see them doing that in the room where the Mona Lisa is. I think that would be hilarious.
I want to see them do some CrossFit, like throwing tires across the sculpture.
I don't think that's going to happen. I hope not.
I hope not too.
Considering I chase after people and tell them not to touch things, I would just be having a coronary.
That would be great CrossFit. Pick up the sculptures and move them.
Yeah, they could do that. That at the same time, it's all about cleaning and moving those things around the Louvre.
I think we're on to something. Let's talk to the Louvre. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in, and make sure to tune in next week for another episode of Paris History, Avec Hemingway. And don't forget to join Claudine's virtual tours every Sunday. They are now free. So why not jump on, watch the tour, give her a little, a little tip if you feel willing, if you feel giving. It's almost Christmas, according to all the stores around Paris. The Christmas decorations are already up. And please join us for our virtual tours. Tune in next week and chat soon.
Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's Bleu, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at ClaudineHemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.